The Breachers. It was a network of people, including those who claimed to have infiltrated the zone, and the people on the inside that enabled them. Where there's an iron-fisted ruling authority, there's always a resistance. And as wonderfully weird as everything we've heard about the zone has been so far, these Breachers honestly take the cake. This is Frequency File, Episode 8. Infiltrating the Olympic Exclusion Zone is a whole lot of work. To start, you'd have to get through, past, or over a 300-meter outer wall. There were layers upon layers of security checkpoints, and the zone was carved out into sectors, each with very specific clearance requirements. If you were somehow able to make it through all of that, then you'd start dealing with the rampant radiation and a whole host of other dangers. So imagine my surprise to hear that there were people who made a whole career out of wall breaching.
Yeah, I lived in the zone for 10 years. My partner worked for ARDA, and I came along for the ride. After a while, I got bored and thought, hey, why not put my years of experience smuggling contraband to good use?
This is Carolyn Murrell. Not her real name, of course, as she was the ringleader of an illicit smuggling ring. If you needed a pack of your favorite brand of smokes from the outside or a souvenir from the inside, Carolyn was your gal.
I mean, yeah, by all measures, it was an easy life on the inside. ARDA took care of most everything. Groceries to your door, free housing. Salary was good. You didn't have much to use it on, but at least you know you'd be set with savings and pension when you eventually went back into the real world.
So you didn't run the smuggling ring for money?
No. Because honestly, once you get used to the anomalies and instability that comes sweeping through, the hardest thing to fight was boredom. I mean, that was constant and never ending. Every day was very much the same. Wake up, check the weather and stability reports, boil water and wish you had coffee, wait for your partner to come home, then sit around and repeat the same conversations night after night.
So the smuggling kept things interesting. What were the most common things requested?
All people inside wanted was coffee, cigarettes, and vodka. All the good vices. But what outside people wanted was the interesting stuff. Anything anti-gravity was popular, and the occasional ask for a live anomaly. We didn't take those requests seriously. These usually came from tourists who were rich and desperate to prove that they'd actually been inside the zone to their rich friends.
I'm sorry, back up. You're saying there was zone tourism?
Oh, yeah. And not the solo breacher variety either. Like sanctioned, scheduled itinerary type tours.
How was that possible? All I've heard is how strict ARDA's security was.
Well, it's true. ARDA had eyes everywhere. But even they couldn't secure the entire border. Not with the instability wreaking havoc on everything. Especially when ARDA's funding began to wind down. They eased up on security, so it got easier in the later years.
Carolyn was generous enough to connect me to Ellison Nagata, who claims to have operated the tours in question. How much did it cost to tour the zone?
Wouldn't you like to know? Let's just say I was able to retire in my early 40s.
Okay, then how did you manage to sneak tour groups in without ARDA noticing?
Logistics? Logistics. Let me tell you what your listeners will really want to hear. The tour packages. By far the most popular, the Anomaly Safari. We'd load tourists up in a transport vehicle and follow any route available to us and see what had come out of the woodwork. And let me tell you, it never disappointed. You ever see a 100-foot tall tree walk? One crossed the road right in front of us. I had a few repeat customers. One couple commissioned a private tour to see the old wall. Dangled a real big tip for me if I got them all the way through into the deep zone. But it turns out I value my life way more than finding a way through that insanity.
And when it came to the topic of Dr. Ophelia Turner, amazingly, the Breachers all knew of her and had the most consistently positive opinions of her.
Never met the woman. But she was a regular and one of my best customers. She paid in advance, ordered consistently, and never made a fuss. And she's the sharpest broad I've ever come in contact with. I have no doubts that she did exactly what all the legends claimed.
Oppie? Oh, she was not a fan of my work. Gave my tour quite a thrill when she stopped our van and nearly threw us all out into the radiation to die. Oh, you should have seen her face, though, when the tourists realized that she was the Dr. Ophelia Turner of legend. Oh, yeah, she was the biggest celebrity when it came to the zone, and everyone wanted a picture with her.
I sat in on some of her seminars. There wasn't a thing about Lim that she didn't know. She was one of a kind.
So, what do you think? Was she a martyr, a myth, or a monster?
Not a myth. She was a real deal.
Martyr, whatever that woman did, she did for the greater good.
The way she tried to sabotage my business? You'd think I'd call her a monster, but she was a lioness, defending her territory. I didn't bring people into the zone because it was the right thing to do, and I knew it. So yeah, I guess of the three, Martyr? She knew how bad things were getting, but she stuck it out anyway. She went down with that ship. I can only respect her for that.
We've reached Frequency File Episode 9, the final episode. Okay, I'll be the first to admit, what started as a magnifying glass on this whole Dr. Ophelia Turner and the Lim Project went off the deep end here. I left the shores of the topic long ago. I assure you that under normal standards, my reporting is laser focused on my target. But I've never run into topics foggier than the Olympic exclusion zone, Lim technology, and Dr. Ophelia Turner. Through this journey, I've tried to chart something of a path through this maze. I'll leave it up to you to decide whether I've succeeded or not. But in my defense, and in tribute to the many, many theories surrounding our topics at hand, here is one last hypothesis. It's the Olympic exclusion zone itself that invites this line of thinking. The delight in rumor, the eager detour onto unmarked side roads, the plunge into fiction over fact. Think about it. First off, this wasn't a personal endeavor. I don't know anyone who lived in or worked in the zone or was relocated from it. I live in Seattle, which admittedly is close enough to see the mountains on the peninsula, but there's never anything out of place when I look out my window. But once I heard the stories about the zone, I couldn't get them out of my mind. Every night, I couldn't help but imagine what it was like to stand on your front porch and watch something called an instability front sweep through and replace your front lawn with a rushing river. To be commuting to work only to have your way blocked by a rampaging Sasquatch. To hear your neighbors gossip through whatever errant radio broadcasts your antenna happens to pick up for the day. Maybe that's nowhere close to what life was like in there. But those are the images they conjure for me, and they are impossible to shake. I am not alone. They have a term for this obsession, the affected. I have unknowingly fallen into the trap, seduced by the rumors and legends of the zone. I sleep on a bed littered with grainy zone photos. I take my daily runs with the Arda broadcasts on repeat in my ear. I squint at incoming rainstorms and wonder if they'll bring a little instability with them. I know I have traded fact for fiction. And on pain of my credibility as a journalist, I am happier for it. A wise man once said, "I want to believe." When we face such a vacuum of information, where the scant details we can glean are more fantastical than the last, our imagination expands to fill the gaps. But that's the romance of it, isn't it? Our generation likes to say that we were born too late to explore the Earth and too early to explore the galaxy. So we reach toward local mysteries, the ones nearby enough to be accessible, yet the more otherworldly, the better, to satisfy our latent explorer's lust. The Olympic Peninsula, within a couple hours' drive, is too enticing not to dream about. So when it comes to the issue of the Olympic exclusion zone, the mystique of Lim technology, and the conundrum of Dr. Ophelia Turner, here is what I know. The Olympic exclusion zone is a real thing. We can still see it. Those monolithic walls sealing its secrets inside like a tomb. Real people lived there, worked there, and we suspect are in there still. Even if we will never know everything that happened on the inside, we know much happened, and it was dangerous. It is a place that no one in their right mind should, and ever will, tread again. Limb technology, on the other hand, is still an open question, leaning more fiction than fact. It was, for sure, a bona fide new type of technology. It had its basis in reality, but they followed the recipe of the best science fiction and futurism. Take a familiar, grounded, easily understandable concept like radio waves, mix in a heaping scoop of technological mumbo jumbo, and top it off with a generous heaping leap in logic. It is that last critical step that lends the most disbelief to the entire story. But that same step is the one all scientists hang their hats on. The desired outcome of their hopes and dreams, the destination of their fevered derivations. It's tempting to believe that those technological quantum leaps are well within our grasp. But for every one that comes true, hundreds more remain fairy tales. And so while I can't verify one way or another, my belief is that limb technology never did many of the things it was purported to do. If it had, we should have seen some fruit of those labors. Lastly, Dr. Ophelia Turner. Martyr, myth, or monster. In the end, it's not for me to judge. We each get to make that call for ourselves. And if this seems like an unsatisfying conclusion to you, think of it this way. She was no more than a blip in history, a footnote in an annotation somewhere. She was a woman who lived an entire life bearing not just the burden of public opinion on her shoulders, but if you believe the full story, the destruction of her homeland and the failure of a nation's best efforts on her soul. Stamping her with a label is the easy way out. It's an oversimplification of a complex life, a disservice to a woman who suffered the judgment of an entire country that needed her at a very specific moment in history. Whoever Dr. Ophelia Turner was, whatever she did, and wherever she is now, I say, I hope you have no regrets. I hope you're at peace with everything that you sacrificed. And I hope you had someone who understood you and loved every version of yourself. You're listening to Frequency File. I'm Chiaki Saruhashi, and I signed off last episode. The story was done. Or so I thought. Just as I wrapped up the season, I was surprised by a call. Think of this as an after-credits scene, an unbearable cliffhanger of events that I'm still reeling from.
Chiaki, you have a call on line 8.
I'm heading out for the night. Can you take a message?
You're going to want to take this one. In fact, I'm routing it to Studio A. Why don't you take it there?
Okay. Hello, this is Chiaki.
I've heard you've been on my trail, sniffing around where you don't belong.
Hoppy? Dr. Turner?
The one and only.
Wow. This is such an honor. I'm so glad you called. I have so many questions.
You've talked enough. It's my turn. Now, there's a few things you got wrong.
Dr. Turner proceeded to ignore my questions completely. She spoke at length, revealing much and little at the same time. But I am out of time, so all I can say is look forward to Frequency File, Season 2.